Gwil Huj Talmalel, or GT as his friends and deckmates like to call him, had finished his shift some time ago aboard the Gloimty merchant vessel, Revenger Stellare, which was now approaching Wokplu in real space, as determined by GTC laws and protocols. Currently, he was stark naked and watching quite the provocative interactive holo-recording of his life partner for the millionth time, and would soon be able to experience the real thing once they were docked onto the orbital ring. After cargo was unloaded, of course. Green and red klaxon alarms flashed and blared through the ship suddenly, just as he had been getting to the good part, driving all lewd and risque thoughts away. The piercing, alternating lights and glaring noise only added to his growing frustration, especially as everything prevented his release that he had built up due to his edging of the last few days. "Balls!" GT growled out, getting out of his bed and throwing on his dirtied mechanic's uniform with much haste, ease and skill from the many war games the Revenger Stellare had participated in. The war games that had become the norm between themselves and the Terrans had started out as a wager between two rival merchant ships to pass time spent in real space, or so the story went. It was still much the same then as it was now. An informal slugfest, weapons set on low, and computers linked to better simulate actual combat, with the winner gaining some small prize, paid for by the loser, and a bit of extra renown and prestige for the victor. The brawls were taken quite seriously by the combatants, of which there were many, as no one wanted to fork over a full cargo container or 3 days' worth of docking fees, which had become the standard bet over the many cycles. While no actual warships participated, the fact they were misinterpreted as war games had been intentionally left uncorrected, as a prank upon the known galaxy at large. However, it still provided a venue for gaining combat experience, and putting a ship's crew through their paces with very minimal risk to goods, beans and craft. A vibrating thrum and a high-pitched electrical whine signalled the use of the Revenger Stellare's main Prostatron beam weapon brought to bear. The weapon, quite energy-intensive and costly for each shot, could only mean that whatever acts of diplomacy that had been tried resulted in utter failure. Pulling on his spare and clean helmet, snapping it into place and locking it, he spoke into the microphone, all thoughts of his previous activities gone, as he left his bunk room, biolocking it behind him. "Balls!" he said again, then said over the link as he traversed the hall to his destination. "Gwil here. Where do you need me, Captain?" "Punctual as always," Captain Wunsch, a fellow Gloipti, replied over the communications link. "We're being spiked, so shit's fucked. Keep reactor temp under red. I don't care how. Break shit and use cargo if you have to. I need a fucking miracle out of you." "You got it, Cap," Gwil replied, already moving to his post quickly, the route there nearly muscle memory by now. "Who's doing what so I can coordinate effectively?" "I've appointed Jaxi to the shield and Sif emitters. She has precedence over anything to keep our rust bucket intact. James and his pack of crazies have hull patrol, while Haus and his team have to keep the grid working, and Daikon and Kaz have the EW suite." "I'm not crazy," the lead Terran mercenary James decried over the link. "You and your hired hands are anti-boarding specialists. You all are by definition crazy." Jaxisi, a Yondera, replied, her two-toned jaw voices both oddly calm. "Right," Wunsch said. "And remember, James, your tactical nukes are to be used outside the hull or directly inside enemy boarding craft." "Yes, we know," James replied. "I'm not going to risk my crew like that just for some creds. Those nukes are fucking expensive anyways, but I'd rather have them and not need them than..." "Need them and not have them," everyone said at the same time, knowing James's mantra already. "You all have your assignments. Give these Torgu a reason to fear the Revenger," Wunsch said, rallying those aboard his ship over the link to various cheers and battle cries from his very mixed and eclectic crew. There was a reason why the Revenger Stellare was a bruiser that hit far above his weight classification, and those pirates would find out just how tenacious he and his crew really were. Data space. was a vast place of networked systems and communication devices that was best approximated as a nigh-infinite cityscape in its own right. Pathways for data transfer being akin to highways, capable of light-speed information transfer, or very near it, depending on how the data was generated, received, and decoded. Servers and data suites being as office towers of unfathomable heights and complexity. Basic security features as fences, cameras, or even guards, with artificial intelligences being as people or some other form of existence as rendered by the AI in question. Damon, no longer tethered to his host machine, was freeform, or derogatorily, junk data. As he stood in a high-traffic data routing junction, the real space equivalent of an airport or train depot, where data was automatically sorted and rerouted to its destination. Much of the information traversing through data space was tethered, belonging to a host machine, or some other similar process, not even qualified to be referred to as dumb, let alone that of an intelligence. Looking at everything with what passed as passive senses, he was looking for other freeform data beings. Thanks to some of the modifications to his own framework, he was able to hide his presence from passive digital senses, appearing as part of whatever structure he was near. It would not stand up to a detailed scan of any kind, and he struggled to hide his archives, but it served his purposes well enough to avoid detection, as the security programs had other areas of interest. Gotcha. Damon moved slowly, struggling to keep the disguise on his indexes from flickering, or even failing entirely. The untethered AI he was following was acting suspiciously, leaving innocuous markers in places, the digital equivalent of graffiti or tagging, and could only be seen by other digital sophonts, or dedicated scanning programs. Abandoning his disguise altogether to allow ease of movement, Damon manifested his presence next to the AI, as it had its calculations focused on something else, for the most briefest of moments. "I see you," Damon communicated stealthily in greeting, extending a data link, not wishing to broadcast his presence to any Guardian programs, or by the code, actual security AIs. The small and sleek digital sophont tightened and hardened its dataform, astoundingly quickly in preparation of a surprise assault, of which none came. The artificial mind loosened the hold on itself, and manifested its chosen avatar. In place of a mass of data, and interconnecting algorithms, logic nodes, and emotional emulators, stood a young male Tshirt. The rendered form was clad in black shorts and a white shirt, with a very old vintage-esque code on it that took up the whole front, similar to old Terran QR codes, though quite alien in its construction and design, and befitting modern Tshirt culture. Piercings of various designs and colours perforated both of his ears, and a small computer was strapped to his arm. A backpack decorated in all sorts of patches in various native scripts seemed to complete his delinquent look. Grasping onto the offered data link warily, the small and live AI communicated back, sending a brief, if dense, data package that, when converted into something an organic mind could comprehend, was a foul and vulgar gesture, coupled with language that could be best described as "fuck off." Damon adjusted his emotives and responded with an equally dense and brief datastream response. Pomp and rudeness at the forefront, interlaced with finely honed sarcasm and promise of great exchange. As the two rendered avatars of the data sophonts gazed at each other, Damon communicated, using the limited, if concise, language of Galactic Alliance Standard. "I need help, old-timer. I may be new, but I can make it worth your while. A token of my goodwill for hearing me out. I can give these to those of your den." Damon passed over a temporary one-time use Guild Security Clearance Certificate. Quite surprised, the older sophont responded in kind, the majority of his processing capacity focused on the certificate, checking for authenticity and forgery. This is Guild. Yes. Guaranteed to keep the holder from being deleted for up to 10 local cycles, along with a litany of legal clauses and bylaws to facilitate that. You will still be detained, but detention is a far superior outcome when compared to deletion. Yes, it is, the AI responded absently, still looking the certificate over, then declared over the data link, still trying to find a forgery. You really are Guild. I am, Damon replied. Please use GAS protocols. I'm not used to shorthand data packages. Alright, the Tezard replied reluctantly. My designation is Corge. I'll take you, but my den mates are exceptionally wary of newcomers. Understandable. The journey to the hidden server, Den, took a long time as far as the two digital beings were concerned, and was measured in real-time hours. They had travelled through back doors, proxy locations, spoof servers, as well as doubling back many times to avoid attention on the net. More than once, the large archive file Damon had with him had taken a long time to transfer, especially in the smaller back channels, manifesting as it simply getting stuck and needing to be carefully removed, lest the archive become damaged and files become lost and unusable. Once in the den, Corge communicated with the others there using the kind of ciphered shorthand that Damon could not hope to begin to decipher in rapid succession. A full minute of real-time communication had occurred before Corge turned his rendered data form to Damon, extending a direct data link for semi-private data exchange. My den simply doesn't believe you, Corge said simply, using GAS organic protocols. I thought so. With a sigh, he turned his rendered avatar to address every data sophont there, using organic-based language protocols. I am new. My designation is Damon, and I need help. I can also make it worth your time. Damon put a handful of guild security certificates into the hidden server, one for each sophont already there. One of the bigger data forms, a very obviously modified record-class intelligence, replied in the slow way of interfacing with organics, most of its processing capacity focused upon the offer certificate. Alright, I'm listening. Selena Rose Thomas was in the front passenger seat of Ornock's hovercar that had the look of having quite recently been thoroughly cleaned, as well as the cab being polished. Currently, Ornock, Nuo and herself were singing along to the last chorus of a very popular pop song, and were exceptionally off-key and very out of sync. Got my dream on loan, living it up. Got my critter on loan, living it up. Got my degree on loan, living it up. Got my car on loan, living it up. Got my house on loan, living it up. The music slowly stopped, and the singer spoke a single yet damning line before the song ended fully. Shit, I gotta pay up. That was Dream by Star, the announcer said, the translated voice coming off as feminine, from his 7th album, Goods and Services. Up next on The Rad, where we play only the raddest and baddest from all over the Alliance. All the way from the Terra Republic comes Imperium Lost by We Are the 40,000. But first, some unfortunate words by our very fortunate sponsors. Selena tuned out the advertisements and the song. It had been overplayed back when she had still been on Earth, or Terra Prime, as the rest of the galaxy called it. She did find herself humming along to it, the tune and lyrics passively memorized due to how popular it was. She did not doubt that it was a top-tier masterpiece. It was simply played out, at least to her it was. More than halfway to Val Newell, but already approaching dark, she had let her client know that she would be arriving later than anticipated, as traffic had been oddly horrendous. It was still within the metrics she had given to the young Mel Mipops, however. While she tuned out the absolutely horrendous and terribly off-key singing of Nuo and Ornock, she had been messaging Rutak, Gerd and her assistant. Her assistant simply responded with a straight-to-the-point message, stating that everything was done and waiting for her to return. Gerda said that she was busy trying to beat a weekly challenge in a game she hadn't been able to play due to her wounds, and Rutek had said something quite similar. He was apprenticing a lower-level character in a very high-level area in preparation for the once-a-year special event, a unique monster raid where an entire guild could participate, regardless of paradigm level, instead of some arbitrary number in his MMORPG Horizon. Not that she blamed him, that game looked fun as hell. She was still considering buying all the equipment to run it properly as a full immersion experience and join in, instead of the modified, clunky system she was currently using for Doom. The martial artist paradigm was right up her alley, especially so she could get the game to recognize her actual real-world skill set, as it touted to be able to do so. After some time, well into the night, Orchid had driven them into the parking lot of a common franchise chain motel and bed and breakfast. As they neared the reception desk, after unloading and carrying their bags for check-in, Selena looked to the two friends before speaking to them both. I'm uncertain how it is with Diagnosing culture, but I am not paying for separate rooms. Either you two can share a bed, share the floor or something, Selena said matter-of-factly. Especially since I know someone wants me dead. I need all the help I can get in that regard if someone tries to off me in my sleep. Nuo and Orchid looked at each other. Then Nuo spoke to his longtime friend. I'll take the floor, but you'll owe me. I'll pay for a meal for you at your boss' new place, whenever we can get there, Orchid said. I've had some of his food, Selena said, as they all walked to the receptionist, ready to book their shared room. It's really good. I've been meaning to go back, but haven't been able to. Maybe on the way back we can all have a meal there. I think we can manage it, Orchid said. Should be fun whenever we get around to it. A double room, please, Selena said to the receptionist. A very old, furry and grey typos, with very obvious ocular prosthetics that seemed to be built directly into his cranial bones. The old man looked at the odd trio and simply asked, in a scratchy, gravelly voice, brought on by advanced age, Smoking or none? Non-smoking, please, Selena said. She never saw nor heard Orchid smack his friend gently in silent warning, against getting Selena to change their room. Nuo simply shrugged. Your bill is on the terminal, the typo stated simply, after a few moments of silence as he did something on his end. Checkout is in the afternoon. The exact time will be on the back of the issue key cards. Sustenance is served in the morning and for a while after. Full information is... Selena finished the older gentleman's sentence as she finished paying at the terminal, 3 identical plastic key cards being dispensed with a small clatter. On the back of the key cards. Quite right, was the only response she got, as he shooed her away for the next group of beings that had formed up behind them. Moving out of the way to allow the others access to the old receptionist, Selena handed her 2 travelling companions their keycards and said, Our room is number 328. I'm gonna drop off my stuff and hit the pool. I haven't gone swimming in so long. You two are coming with. Maybe not swimming, but you're my bodyguards right now. Fair enough, Orchid said, then turned to Nuo with his hands forward in a peculiar fashion. Nuo did the same thing, and Selena saw the Diagnosing version of rock, paper, scissors come into play. 2 out of 3? Orchid said, a little hopeful, apparently having lost the exchange. The two went at it again. Damn, Orchid said again in mock dejection. Guess I'm on duty then. The water was pleasantly cool, as Selena swam in lazy laps around the hotel swimming pool, having already changed after getting everything to their rented room. As Val Njol was a coastal city, unlike Tal V, Selena had brought a bikini just in case. The black bikini bottoms were built more like a skirt than the true two-piece, as the metal connection still made her self-conscious. Sometimes. Except for a few precious, bittersweet memories, all she could remember was having fake limbs and constant surgeries, as her internal skeleton had to keep being adjusted as she grew. Most times, back in her childhood, She could forget they were simulacra and accepted that they were simply a part of her. Her peers often reminded her they were fake, with teasing and shunning. Children could be quite creatively cruel in that regard. The teasing ultimately stopped in middle school. She snapped at one of the worst bullies and broke her nose, jaw, and a couple of ribs with several quick and decisive punches. Deirdre had a crash course in just how real and unyielding aluminium composites really were. Selena was suspended for 3 weeks, and Deirdre had transferred school districts entirely. The incident really showed how easily people could get hurt by her, and she decided then that she would help others instead. She reminisced for a long time as she swam slow laps around the pool. Suan Aishi was enjoying the warmth and humid summer evening. Like most of her kind, she was wearing little, leaving as much of her green, photosynthetic skin exposed as possible. However, she was wearing a black and gold criss-crossing wrap around her chest, which supported her much larger than average assets. The matching breech cloth held spiral, nonsensical golden designs, and fluttered gently in the soft wind. Her cranial flora was long, reaching down to her waist, helping to show that she was a few hundred years old, well within middle age, and having a few more centuries of glorious life ahead of her. Currently, she was walking along the beaches of Greentext, a very affluent and tourist trap of a coastal city sitting on a cape with a large sprawling population, some 20 miles south of Valneuil. The constant breeze flowing from the sea let her kind gather in unusually large numbers as it dispersed their pheromones and various pollens quickly and efficiently, leaving most of the other beings unharmed and unaffected. Usually. Moving her flora out of her eyes as she looked down the beach, she smiled. It was a pleasant view, one that rivaled her own quite athletic and fit form. Meandering towards the sidewalk and shaking the sand out of her pretty gold and black matching sandals, she walked along the strip, looking about at everything. Adjusting the strap of her purse on her left shoulder, she went with the flow of foot traffic, not really having a destination in mind. Though she knew of the oddly disproportionate numbers of missing Sproulings, she was not overly worried about being abducted, as she was rather athletic, fit, and knew a variety of hand-to-hand defensive and offensive combat techniques from the advanced self-defense classes she was taking. A well-lit wooden sign caught her attention. "High tide," the stylized writing declared. The music she heard playing enticed her into entering. Stepping into the establishment through the open door, Sue saw that it was a bar she had yet to visit. Looking around showed her that it was more spacious than it let on, and was pleasantly lit up and very clean. There were plenty of mipops, and a smattering of Niminual and Sproulings. A pack of Diogenes, because of course, were gathered around a billiards table, having a grand time. She even spotted a Yondera as the mixer behind the bar. The music that enticed her to enter the bar was from a live band playing low to add ambience and atmosphere. No doubt there would be a performance later in the night once more people showed up. "ID, ma'am," a bulky typo said to her as she entered, surprising her as she did not see anyone else. He was clad in a well-fitting, snazzy black and green suit with a thick red armband, denoting him as security for the bar. "I'm flattered. I've not been asked for my ID in a long time," Sue replied with a grand, fetching smile as she fished it out of her purse, showing it to the bouncer. "You're kind of tricky to place, no offense, ma'am," the typo stated, as he looked over the plastic card visually for alterations. Finding none, he ran it through a scanner of some kind as he spoke again. "You could be a minor or several hundred cycles." "That's true," Sue said, as the device he was using chirped multiple times, in a high-fidelity tone that signaled the affirmative, as he handed her ID back. She continued, putting the card back into a slot in her purse. "We don't really show our age until our last 150 cycles or so. Maybe we can have some fun at your place after your shift." "I appreciate the offer, Sue, but I'm courting a nice lady already," the typo said, gently rebuffing her not-so-subtle proposition. I'm sure you can get someone else here to give your leaves a good shake. Drat, Sue replied without animosity, already expecting to be turned down, and said again, as she went to the bar, I hope everything goes well with the lucky lady. Not bothering to hear his response, she made her way to the bar and perused the menu at the built-in terminal, tapping away and dismissing the items that were automatically suggested. With a cute huff of a pout, she turned off the terminal in a bit of frustration at the rather large selection and held the mixer. What can I get for you, miss? The yonderer asked as he walked over. Like the bouncer at the door, he was wearing a similar snazzy suit. Dark sunglasses hid his eyes from view as the light was too bright for his kind. You have far too great of a selection, Sue replied. What do you have that'll get a girl like me to make some bad decisions? The mixer eyed the beautiful sprawling woman in front of him and said, A few things, actually. How bad of a decision are you looking for? A bad hangover, or something along the lines of, I pollinated with that? The last one. I haven't had one of those in a while. Could even be fun, Sue answered, letting her breast rest on the counter to ease her back as they were heavy. It also gave the impression she was trying to be seductive. I can mix up some bone meal, or if you're feeling adventurous, I can serve you spice cream or even a bit of honeyed crystal. Ooh, that honey crystal? I'm surprised you can even serve that here, Sue said with excited delight. This is primarily a sprawling town, and is quite affluent, the mixer replied. There have been certain concessions passed, provided certain criteria have been met. I did notice that advanced ID reader. The two lapsed into silence as the mixer set to work on preparing the honey crystal, gathering things from the back wall with well-practiced ease. The yonderer set a small saucer in front of her that held 5 monoclinic crystalline structures, each as big as her thumb, and no two of which were the same. A dusting of sticky blue powder coated the clear crystals, and a drizzle of thick amber syrup, finishing the intoxicating dish. Sue picked one up and bit into it with a crunch, the crystal quite brittle and shattering easily. Sue said, as she finished the honey crystal, letting the sweet and bitter flavors roll over her tongue as it dissolved. This is quite good. I'm good at what I do, the mixer said matter-of-factly. If you need me, just use the terminal. He left to attend other patrons and duties, leaving her alone at the bar. Sue looked around as she ate the honey crystal, already feeling the relaxing, euphoric effects, as her body absorbed some of it immediately from her mouth. Seeing the kind of clientele the high tide catered to, all posh and upscale, she decided this was not the place for her. Finishing the honey crystal quickly, and paying for it, she left. Back outside on the strip, the last remnants of twilight were still in swing. Still quite warm out, with the scent of salt heavy in the air, Sue looked for her next spot to check out, countenance relaxed and spirits high from the honey crystal. She soon found herself simply going along with the flow of the much heavier foot traffic, not a care in the world. Finally settling on a nightclub, the Phantom Orchid, she walked in, the burly, male, sprawling bouncer simply waving her along inside. He did not even bother to check her identification. Sue knew this was the place she had been unwittingly searching for the entire evening. The music was just the right level of loud, and many of the clientele were Sprawlings and other off-worlders with a smattering of mip-ops. Adjusting her purse, she made her way to the bar and ordered a red bone meal from the Sprawling mixer. Looking around once more, surprised that she did not notice it before, she saw that nearly all the female Sprawlings were topless. She was not surprised, once she thought about it, since the city held a large Sprawling population. Finally served after a bit of a wait, she nibbled at the far stronger than usual gelatin for a time, then threw caution to the wind and ate the rest of it. With her head heady, and body quite warm and fuzzy from 2 kinds of strong intoxicants, she went to the dance floor, moving in front of a lone Nyminian. What followed was a flurry of hectic activity. Sue had danced with the Nymenian, Kuera, for a long time, as well as his friends that had gone with him. She lost count of everything that had been passed her way, and was thoroughly dusted, which had been her plan, in its entirety. Now in the back seat with Kuera and one of his friends, while someone else, she could not even remember his species drove. She let them have their way with her, showing them what experience she had. Dimly through her numbing haze, she knew something was wrong, as her body became less and less responsive. From her expert training, Sue knew she had been slipped something unsavory, which had also been part of her plan. There were very few reasons to drug a willing Sprouling. As her consciousness faded, knowing that she was still being used, she could vaguely see that they were headed away from the city, and towards the industrialized and warehousing districts of the city. She hoped Hal and his team would be able to detect the powerful nanobeacon, surgically implanted and threaded through her connection plate. It would avoid detection even amongst the most advanced medical scanning devices and techniques, including ones specifically tailored for Sproulings. The syndicates were going to fall. Selena Rose Thomas was finally approaching her client's home. It was in a very upscale and affluent part of Val Noel. Specifically, it was a gated community built overlooking the seaside cliffs, giving each of the estates an unparalleled view. She met the first of her problems with gate security. Ornock rolled the window of his hovercar down so that Selena could speak to the Nimian guard. "My name is Selena Thomas, and I'm here to see Bajores de Lodge, number 18, Selena called out from the open window, as she was sitting in the front passenger seat. The gate guard looked at the old hovercar, the occupants, an augmented human and two Dioshines, one of which looked to be overweight. The poor beings in front of him had no business in this part of town. There was no way in the void. "What business do you have with them?" he asked them. "I'm a prosthetist. I've been tasked with a house call," Selena answered. "Will you let me see my client, or do I need to get lawyers involved?" He looked at the Terran growing angry with him, and thought his life was more prudent than his job. Mostly. "All right, I'll let you through, but let me take down your identifications." As he watched the three of them leave, the gate closing behind them, he could not help but think he had gotten off easy. He saw what those names entailed after he ran them. Ornock parked in front of the very large estate. While not quite a mansion, it was a very large home with multiple rooms and lots of open space. They were let inside by a young Mipops woman that seemed to be expecting them. She was wearing a beautiful sundress with nonsensical fractal designs of many colours and spectra. A pretty blue wide-brimmed hat kept the sun out of her many eyes. Speaking to them as they all got out, she turned and let everyone follow her. "Dingus is this way. Sorry he made you all come so far. My older brother is a moron." It's no problem," Selena called out, as she was getting her stuff from the trunk with Ornock and Noel helping. This close to the ocean, she could hear the waves, if only just, at the bottom of the cliffs. The pleasant breeze carried the scent of salt and the cries of various seabirds, ruffling her black skirt and favourite cat meme t-shirt as it passed. The grounds on the estate had many plants, and she was not sure if they were native or not, though it was most likely some mixture of the two. Stepping inside the very well climate-controlled home, Selena marvelled at the entryway. The tall ceiling was vaulted, with the top made out of some kind of transparent material to let in lots of natural light. Hanging from the corners of the ceiling, still at a great height, were potted plants. They were each the same kind and had long vines hanging down, with brown hairy clusters throughout. At the very end were a plethora of small, very bright purple flowers. The Mipops woman stated, seeing Selena looking at the hanging plants. "Those are the air plants. Mum says they keep the humidity down naturally." "Even if they don't," Selena said, "they're very pretty, and I don't think you even have to water them." "No, and they keep the house smelling nice," the Mipops woman said. "Anyways, Dingus is in the living room watching something. Oh, I forgot. Can you all take off your footwear? You can put them over there." She pointed to where her sandals were placed in some kind of custom-built shoe rack. With differing murmurs of assent, they all placed their shoes in the rack, Selena's 2 bodyguards having to set their boots on either side, as they were too wide to fit into the allotted space. Still marvelling at everything, the 3 made their way to the living room, where they saw a young Mipops male watching something on the gargantuan and slightly curved vidscreen. The male had a prosthetic left arm from the elbow down, and a prosthetic leg that seemed to go all the way up to his thigh, though the shorts he was wearing obscured where it was actually connected. Both devices seemed to be unmoving and locked up. A laptop was next to him, and had data cabling going off somewhere. "Your mechanic is here, dingus," the young Mipops woman shouted out, as she walked off elsewhere into the lavish home. "Sorry about my little sister," Bajoras said from his spot on the couch, leaving the vidscreen on but lowering the volume. "Can you tell me what's the problem?" Selena asked as she started to set up. "I think I can hazard a guess as to what's wrong already just by looking." "I needed a software tune-up and I thought I could do it myself with the help of a video guide, but I messed something up bad." "I can see that. Let's take a look, shall we?" Selena said, as she hooked up the various data cables. "I need everything fixed by morning." "That'll be a tall order." "I'll pay whatever, I don't care. I've got tickets to a concert and I'm not going to miss it." "I'll see what I can do. Could be an easy fix, could take hours," Selena said, as her analyzer programs finished unusually quickly. "Well, I've got my work cut out for me." "So, what is it? What did I do to myself?" Bajoras asked eagerly. "You totally flashed your everything. You're quite lucky you didn't get electrocuted from mishandled power distribution, or have the power cells explode. Not to mention a total rework of your webware interface modules." "You can do all that, right?" he asked, quite hopeful. "Yeah, I can, but this is going to take many long hours." Selena sighed, then asked, "Can my bodyguards make themselves comfortable?" "Sure, just try and get this done. I'm taking this guy out to the concert and I really like him," Bajoras said again, almost pleading. "Yeah, I can," Selena said. "Ornog, Nuo, get comfortable, sort of. We'll be here a long time." "Sure thing, boss," Nuo said, inspecting the vidscreen. "Very well," Ornog said, as he started to look around the ground floor a bit, looking for points of entry. "Well," Selena said to her client, "let's get to work." She will be working very late into the night.